Hi, everyone. Today, I'd like to introduce Yacine Achiakh. He is the co-founder and CEO of Wisear. Before this, he spent some time working in products at Criteo. Yacine holds an MSc from the ESSEC Business School. So, Yacine, I gave a brief introduction of you there, but I'd love to hear more about your story. Maybe a bit about your background and your journey that brought you to where you are today.
So thank you for having me first, Robert. I appreciate that. It's always cool to have some opportunity to talk about what we do at Wisear. So I was born and raised in Paris. That's why you have the thick French accent that you're going to hear all across the podcast. I've been doing my best over the past 10 years in the US to get rid of it, but it stays. Hard to get rid of it. I was born and raised in Paris, moved to the US 10 years ago to San Francisco first, and then came back to France in 2019 to start Wisear with my co-founder. And then afterwards, been doing some back and forth between France and the US to ensure that we have a great development of the business and also meet of investors. But as part of my background, I think I would say I've always been super into video games, extremely geeky stuff. I spent and I still spend hours selecting the right keyboard. I once bought 5 different tablets just to find the best one to play Clash Royale, for instance. So everything related to finding the right gear or optimizing the way we interact with technology to improve my performance, in this case, in video games, has always been very, very keen to my heart. And so, yeah, and I guess I first studied business in business school, but then realized quickly that this is not where I would see myself in the future. So I joined a company called Criteo. It's one of the French first unicorns doing AI on online advertising. And I was product manager over there. That's where I met my co-founder. We successfully built a couple of products that we scaled to a couple of thousand clients, making millions in revenue. And then I think after 5 years working in the online advertising, we realized that really that's not where we were projecting ourselves in the longer run. I would say we wanted to do something that was maybe more useful to the end user. And so by revisiting a lot of different topics, my co-founder has a background in neurotechnology. We decided to start Wisear, and that's why I'm here right now talking to you.
Well, that sounds like an awesome journey. And, you've really got exposed to a lot of different things on this journey. As you mentioned, you have some background in really looking closely at technology and selecting the right options for the job. You have some background in AI from your previous position. And so I was wondering if we could zone in a little bit further on really what sparked your initial interest and involvement in the neuroscience or neurotechnology space. I know that you mentioned that your co-founder had some background in that space. Is it the conversations with him that really started getting you interested in these sorts of things?
Yeah. So I think what happened is that around 2018, I would say, we started discussing about starting a project together. So both of us were looking for the next step in our journey, I would say. And at that point, we were both of us located in San Francisco. Our company had an office in the Silicon Valley in Palo Alto. And the good thing when you are in this environment is that you're surrounded by people who have very diverse background. I mean, mostly engineering, but that work for very, very cool companies. And so we used to play soccer after work with a team of coworkers. We were really bad, really losing most of the games. But what was fun is that we ended up playing with people working for other companies, including people working for Neuralink, so the company from Elon Musk doing brain implants. And so when talking with them after the game, after we lost, I kind of discovered about this company. So it was 2018. It wasn't that famous yet. And when talking about this, my co-founder and I, we had kind of this haha moments where we're like, whoa, so these guys are really trying to crack the future of the future of the future of human-machine interface, where we would be directly integrated and connected to the machines, but also between humans. And maybe that podcast would be already over. You and I would have just be exchanging a flow of ideas, and that would be done, And we're like, okay, this is crazy. But that's going to be I don't know, 50 years, 30 years, whatever. It's going to be a couple of years down the road. and it's going to require invasive technology. And so we were like, this is crazy that there are already people working on that future, but there's no one working on like how we can build a consumer device that's leveraging the brain activity, that's like enabling you already today to gain benefit from it. And there's no company today that's like built a device that is massively available to everyone. And that's kind of what sparked the initial thinking about Wisear. Okay, so it was like, okay, we need to create the first brain wearable that can be worn by anyone, anywhere, and that provide a strong value for these users. And at that point, so it was 2018. So, I mean, many neurotech companies got created afterwards. But really, when we looked at it at that point, there were already some devices on the market, right? There was the Neurosky, there was the Dream headband that were already available. There was the Muse headband that were already available for the end user. But what we realized that these devices were lacking of two main things. One, they were lacking a form factor that would be non-stigmatizing, so that you could basically wear it on a daily basis at every hour of the day, right? You can have great value if you have like a headband around your head while you sleep, but the thing is that you would not wear that at work, even if it were to give you like a good signal. So the first thing we needed to do was like find the right form factor that people would be willing to wear and in which we could integrate such brain wearable technology. And the second thing we realized is that most of these devices had a value proposition that was not necessarily talking and working for every single user out there. And so if you want to make sure that your technology is widely adopted, you need to make sure that you solve a problem that is very simple to understand and that talks to as many users as possible. And that's kind of the two, I would say, hypotheses that we took when we started thinking about Wisear. One, we need to make sure the technology fits into a device you're already wearing. And two, we need to make sure that the value proposition we have works for everyone and solve a problem that's like a big problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I totally see where you're coming from, not only with the form factor aspect, where it's hard to see wide adoption if it's not something that people are already comfortable wearing or that they can fit seamlessly into their life or fit seamlessly into their day-to-day. And then I also see where you're coming from regarding when you met these people working on Neuralink, they were working on what might be cutting edge or what everybody might be getting like in 20 years or in 50 years. And you were thinking like, how can we bring this neurotechnology to the public faster? And so it seems like you and your team really have figured out how to combine those two ideas pretty well into the products that you're working on today. And before we start diving into talking more specifically about those products, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about the founding story. As you guys had these ideas and you started maybe brainstorming or prototyping, what happened first? Did you go out and find some engineers to work with, or did you raise money, or did you kind of start building things like in a garage, for example, and then once you found the thing that you felt was gonna be what you guys wanted to go all in on, that's when you started like building out things further?
Yeah, so it wasn't in the garage because we didn't have a garage, unfortunately, at that point. But yeah, so what we did, my co-founder and myself, once we kind of zoomed in on like these two things, we're like, okay, so these are the kind of general principles we're going to be putting behind our product. And so at that point, we decided we would leave our company. So we both left Criteo. And we started buying a couple of like different devices online. So we started the OpenBCI that we bought online. And the idea here was like to try to see what we can already do without investing too much money. I think originally we set ourselves like a limit of like not spending more than 20K for a first 6 months to a year of exploration of exactly what we could measure, what could be done, and like how far we could push the technology. And so again, like, so these two principles, right? Number one is it needs to fit into your everyday device. So at that point, 5 years ago, like the main device that we were wearing every day that had electronics in it was wireless earphones. So very quickly, we decided that the first form factor we would tackle would be integrating that technology into wireless earphones. So where do you place the sensors? How do you place the sensors? What kind of analog front end you have to use and so on? What kind of signal you get out of it? So the idea was like, we started by building this very, very, very dummy prototype. So we had like earplugs on which we would be putting like conductive textile. And I would be putting these in my ears with like big wires popping out, like connected to like an external board that was super big. And we would just like try to record the signal coming from many, many different things. So, when you focus, distraction, like drowsiness, also control, like what kind of muscular activity we can leverage, what kind of eye activity we can leverage. And very quickly we realized that actually the controlling part was the one where we would have the most success based on what we would see in the signal, and also the one that would solve the biggest problem. Like as in like for the past 30 years, we've been trying to improve the human-machine interfaces to make them more robust, more efficient, like faster and so on. And yet the thing is that as technology becomes smaller and smaller, more and more wearable, like we realize that the controls we have are not adapted at all for the mobility, right? Like a keyboard and mouse are great, like touchscreen is great, but like whenever your hands are busy, how do you control your device? Voice is great, but voice is like also not very private. It can be slow sometimes. So, we're lacking the right human machine interface to make sure we can use our devices to the full potential in our daily lives. And so that's kind of what we realized very quickly is that, okay, we need to feed the technology into wireless earphones, and we need to solve a problem that's like a big problem. And that problem that we're going to tackle at first is the human machine interface. How can we make that human machine interface completely instant, super private, and always accessible, because you don't have to use your hands nor your voice to control it. And that's where we started pushing. And so once we had, I would say, that product roadmap, or that at least that product vision, and once we had the form factor that we wanted to fit in, we started building like some homemade prototype at first. So it wasn't in our garage, it was in our living room, but same really. And so wearing this prototype, having people around us wearing them, and trying to see what kind of signal we could build, we could collect, and what kind of quick algorithm we could build. And here we realized that by leveraging simple facial microregisters, we could already collect a signal that was interesting to work with, not perfect, but interesting to work with, and that was generalizable across different users, so across friends, family, and so on. So that means that already we had a good hunch from 6 months, maybe 1 year in, that there was something to do where we could build a technology that would work on anyone, anywhere, and that we could propagate through a form factor that would be a earphones form factor, which is a form factor everyone uses. And so at that point, that's when we started to look into, okay, how can we scale that? Like we have proven that there's something that's feasible. How can we scale that? And from there, we first collected a few grants. Then we went through Techstars as an accelerator program. And then we raised first rounds in 2022. And so from there, we just like kind of kept getting more public funding, up to like 3.5 million in funding total. And we started, we did hire a team that's like a team of 15 people, which is kind of a cross-functional team. We have people coming from the hardware, we have people coming from the software, a lot of people coming from the data science, because that's really where our core expertise is, and then business and product, of course. So yeah, we try to build a team that would be the most agile team to help us crack all the problems you have to crack to move from a simple idea to I have a product on the market.
Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing with us, not only the prototyping journey, but how things have progressed and how you built out your team and all these details. And so now that we've talked a little bit about how the company got started and how things have progressed from then until now, I was wondering if we could dive in and talk in a little bit more detail about the actual product or the actual technology. From our conversation thus far, it's my understanding that your company builds earphones that can decode neural signals. And so I think our audience would be super interested to hear even more about this product.
I guess maybe the best way, maybe if we have time at the end, I might show you a quick demo, but like otherwise I'll share the links. So one thing so we've been iterating a lot, right, on the different prototypes. I said we started with like earplugs of conductive textile. We at some point I had this kind of a big chest strap I would put with like wires in the first version of earphones, and we had like a smaller box, but I would still have to tuck it to my tie it to my belt, So So I would like do be demos on stage, like it would work or not, and like I would just have this thing on my tuck to my belt. And so the latest prototype we have, which is going to be the latest version before we release our first product this year, is this thing. So let me just remove the blur, and that's going to help me explain better what we can really capture. So this thing is the latest prototype we have. Okay, so if you look at this, you have basically four electrodes total. So you have one electrode that's like, we have one sensing electrode and one reference electrode, which are going to be the two ear tips of the device. And then here we have two electrodes that we use as bias. They're connected together, which really help us drastically reduce the electromagnetic noise that you have around you. Because one thing we realized pretty quickly in the journey is that it's very, this is one thing to record data in a very controlled environment, like in the laboratory where everything is super controlled, you don't have too much electromagnetic noise. It's a very different story to get data and to get an algorithm to work outside of that laboratory in an environment that you don't control at all. Like you're running, you're in the rain, you're in the subway, you're at CES, and like you have like all these Bluetooth and Wi-Fi router around you. And like we realized that pretty quickly, if we did not manage to really shield ourselves and protect ourselves from the electromagnetic noise, there was nothing that we would be able to do at any point of time for the user. So cracking that was a big chunk of the first years of work, like making sure that we were robust to your everyday life, really, both from the hardware and from a signal processing standpoint. So what these earphones have, as I said, like they have a couple of electrodes, they have an analog front end, and then we are running all our algorithms directly on the device. Why? Well, because it enables us to do two things. One, it's much more private. There is no raw data leaving the device, like not kind of your brain data wavering in the nature or like through Bluetooth to your phone. Two, because this is the required condition if you want to provide a good quality human-machine interface. If it takes you like 5 seconds between the moment you do a gesture and the moment it triggers a control, you're going to be unhappy as a user. You're not going to like our product. If you want us to be able to kind of provide you with the right quality of controls you deserve, we need to make sure that it runs in the fastest possible way. And running it on the device itself is the only way to do it. So all our algorithms are optimized to run directly on the device. Now, what kind of signal can we capture and what do we do with that signal? So really, we can capture everything that ranges from EMG, so muscular activity, EOG, electroculography, so your eyes, electrical activity, and brain activity, EEG activity. The first two generations of controls and features that we've built are leveraging for now EMG, so muscular activity, and EOG. So the way to see it is that we are leveraging facial microgestures, so little like a pressure of the masseter, which is the muscle at the back of the jaw, so little jaw clenchings, but really, really subtle. You like I could give you a demo afterwards, you would not notice it. And so we use that as like a simple click, a double click, or a triple click. That's kind of our clicker, I would say. The second thing we've been developing for the past 12 months now is the eye activity. So we are able to detect if you're glancing to the right and glancing to the left for now. We're going to be adding verticality and additional graduality, like gradients over the next few months. So the idea is that with that, we have a very simple navigation system, right? We can navigate to the right, to the left. We can select anything we want with our clicker. And so that's something we wanted to have out there as a way to enable users to have a simple point and click system that they can already use either to control the media on their device, play, pause the music, go to the next song, increase the volume, really the basic things we do with earphones. But also, if you think about this, like I was trying to play a temple run on my laptop earlier, just using our controls. So you could expand that into controlling whichever app you want or whichever software you want on whichever platform. And that becomes even more interesting in a world where tomorrow the screen that you're going to have is not going to be on a laptop or in your hand. It's going to be in front of your eyes. So you're going to need a new type of human-machine interface to navigate that screen. And so providing something that's completely hands-free, voice-free, and doesn't require to kind of tap something on the side or have a remote in your hand is something that is valuable. So to get to your question, to finish answering your question, for now, we have built controls leveraging facial muscle and eyes activity. We have more things coming in, specifically leveraging brain activity in the coming 12 months. It's still on the research phase on our side. We know we can capture, the basic paradigm, like alpha attenuation when you close your eyes, or some auditory attention paradigm. So these are the things that we know we can capture. We're trying to see how we can make that a product for now. But really, we wanted to have something that's very simple and that works for anyone at first. And that's why we started with the muscular and eyes activity.
Well, first off, I'll say I'm definitely excited about what you guys have built so far, and I'm also excited to see what ends up getting released out of these kind of R&D projects that you referred to. So excited about both sides of this, and I'm also really impressed that you guys were able to find basically a control signal that works during the current like paradigm of the way that we use devices, but also appears that it might work in the future of where devices are heading. And so that was a very strategic way for you guys to set it up that it can kind of work in both the current and future paradigms.
Yeah. And actually, it's something that's even more interesting is that we've always tried to work in a hardware agnostic approach. So we've been building earphones at first because this is where the market was going. But like right now, more and more we have requests from multiple companies on like integrating the technology into glasses. And so basically that might be one of the next form factor we're going to look into, which is like smart eyewear, and not just like integrate the sensors inside your ears, but could be on the temples, could be on the nose pad. So really the idea is like, we're not really building devices, we're building like a neural interface platform, or maybe the way you want, that can sit on any device. And that's really where we see and where we envision ourselves in the future, is by being the neural interface provider of any device maker that would like to integrate such technology for human-machine interface purposes, or later on maybe for wellness or health purposes, because we have the best algorithm to help them doing that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you and your company kind of envision yourselves as more so focused on the neural interface, and the actual like products or devices are just ways of testing that out and optimizing that, basically.
Absolutely. Like having a flagship product enables us to kind of both put the technology out on the market for everyone to try out. And also something that's going to make the difference in the longer run is the access to a large volume of data. Like having multiple users that are like wearing your product is what's going to make it better in the longer run, right? Both because these users will be like helping us. Like the way we see it is like having a community of users that's willing to take some, recordings for A or B or C because they subscribe to it, or like they register for it, and maybe they get paid for it also, is going to help us in the longer run get like to the technology to the point where we want it to be. And having even today a community of 10,000 users who are wearing like a neural interface device on a daily basis is unseen. Like there is no such community out there. So, and we know that data is key for any future development. So really what we're trying to get out there is we'll also like that device is going to help us build that first community that's going to give us like a longer term edge on the market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I know something you mentioned earlier was that you and the team are really focused on generalizability. And I think, as you mentioned, getting a lot of this, the more data you can get, the better you can write these sorts of algorithms that
Absolutely.
are generalizable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to touch a little bit on some of the R&D that I've seen your group working on, I saw a video online of the Wisear silent speech controls, and I was really impressed. And so I was just wondering, first off, what sparked the idea for building this feature, and then also if that feature gets implemented into like the products or the platform in the future, what's kind of your vision for that feature going forward?
Yeah, so the silent speech is just the direct continuity of what we've been doing. If you think about this, when we're building that novel type of human-machine interface, we're building a clicker, we're building a navigation system, but you also need to find a way to replace the complex commands, right? You need to find a way to replace your keyboard. And so voice is a good way to do it. Like dictating something is a good way to kind of go faster in text input. The issue is that voice is not private. So silent speech is just the way to make that happen in the most private fashion. So that's kind of where we see this is like just the continuity of what we've been building, a clicker, a navigation system, and now a way to replace the keyboard. I cannot disclose too much at the moment on exactly how it works. The only thing I can tell is like it's leveraging muscular activity, of course, brain activity as well, and additional sensors. It's still, I would say, early on in terms of the capabilities we have. So right now we've been first trying to assess what could be done by trying to detect keywords. So that's why in the video, I think from Cleo, who's one of our brightest data scientists, you do see her just like giving out a few keywords, and that's what we've been training on at first. The path forward to be able to detect everything that you're saying is still something that we have to explore, but that's also part of our DNA, right? Our DNA is to kind of research and then transform into products. So our research team is still working on it. Whenever we have more breakthroughs, we'll definitely share them. But so yeah, right now it's like the only thing I can say is like this is just the direct continuity of the roadmap that we're building, and this is kind of the last bits that we're going to need if we want to have a complete human-machine interface that only relies on Wisear technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That, as I mentioned before, that is pretty awesome. That's a pretty awesome tech that you guys have built, and totally understandable that you're not able to go into like super specific detail due to, I'm sure, like some proprietary.
Absolutely. Yeah. We already have a couple of patents, but we have more coming. So we need to make sure that the information stays private until the patent is actually published. So that's why you're protecting the novelty of your invention.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else that we've touched on briefly already, but I was wondering if we could zoom in a little bit closer on what are some of the key use cases for Wisear's products or technology as they stand today?
Yeah, maybe can I ask you, what type of earphones do you wear or headphones? What's the brand that you're wearing?
When I do wear headphones, I usually, if I'm like traveling somewhere that I want something pretty like small or sleek or just easy to carry around, I'll usually wear the Apple AirPods. And then if I'm studying or reading or somewhere where I want to really focus, then I will use, I don't even remember what brand they are, but they're like an over the ear headphones that have like some noise canceling functionalities.
Cool. And so the AirPod thing that you're using while you're traveling, I would assume. So what? How do you control them usually? Do you use the controls on the on the earphones, or do you use the controls on the smartphone? How do you control the media on it?
Honestly, on mine, the controls on the earphones are kind of clunky, so usually I use the controls on the smartphones, except for the only one that I really use on the earphone with the AirPods right now is the one where, like, if you want to pause, you can just take it out of your ear and like listen to something real quick and then put it back in. I do use that one, but besides for that, I'll mainly use the controls on the smartphone.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So that means that the one you use is the one that's like just the one that's intuitive and that like you kind of easily remember because it's tied to a simple gesture. I remove it from my ear and then I put it back on, which is not like me having to remember some kind of complex combination of tapping, double tapping, and so on. So
Right,
the
exactly.
use cases, getting back to it, like I think like this is a good example what you're describing. So most people that we talk to, they sometimes they don't even know they have controls on their earphones. So what's happening is that today the access to these controls on the earphones are not always so like extremely simple or intuitive. Many people don't even know they exist. And for those that do know they exist, they never remember what does what, you know? And sometimes they even struggle to find the actual cue of the earphones to press the right button. AirPods are pretty good for that, but like for some others that you have to press inside your ear, it's not really nice gesture whatsoever. So the use cases now, in general, I would say that we will have a control if we focus on like just the media control. So just the very simple everyday usage of your earphones. Our controls will be simpler and faster to use than your regular find my button on my earphones thing, or I have to pull out my smartphone from my pocket, then unlock it, then pause the music, then put it back on in my pocket. So this is just like our basic promise. Now we can focus on like narrow down on like some specific use cases. I'm going to talk about some that are dear to mine because these are my use cases, but I can give you two. Number one, I do a lot of bouldering. And so, you know, when you're bouldering, you're basically, I usually listen to podcasts when I do so, or I actually like listen to music, but podcasts and music. My hands are all chucked up, and so I really like. There are two moments where that like most of the session is very annoying for me to kind of have to unlock my phone with my dirty finger. It doesn't really work all the time, or go and change the music. I can't really like again touch my earphones. It's gonna be disgusting. So really having a solution that allows me to kind of skip the ads in my podcast or just go to the next song hands-free, voice-free is something I would be interested in. And so are many of the rock climbers that we've been talking to. The other scenario that happens to me a lot is like when you're at home, you're cooking, same listening to a podcast, listening to music, you get a call or you want to go to the next song. Well, usually you have to kind of stop cooking, wash your hand, grab your phone. It's full of water. Like it doesn't really detect what you want to do. You have to kind of do it several times. Or same goes with the earphones, like your hands are going to be slippery. So just very simple kind of. It's all these very simple kind of use cases on a daily basis where you are in this kind of limited accessibility, and yet you're still wearing these earphones because they become such a big part of our daily life that basically we are wearing them multiple hours a day. So these are very simple use cases tied to the media control. There is, like talking a bit further in the future, I think augmented reality is also where we see a lot of value for what we're providing. And we've actually already started signing distribution agreements with a lot of augmented reality headset makers out there. So the value here is that you have your glasses in front of your eyes, but today, like the human machine interface hasn't been properly cracked. I'm not talking about like the Apple Vision Pro that you can use at home and like it's big goggles, you have like gazillions of sensors and so on it, because this is a good use case for like VR. I don't think it's going to be the device we're going to be wearing tomorrow in the street. I'm talking about actual AR glasses, like DigiLens glasses, like Vuzix glasses, like these companies that are trying Snaps glasses, or like even the smart glasses from Meta, the Meta Ray-Ban series. So these are devices where today the only control they offer that's like hands-free, voice-free is voice. The issue is that voice is really not adapted if you are in a public setup. It's not adapted when there is a lot of noise around you, and it's not adapted for very simple control, like saying, "Hey Siri, pause the music," or "Hey Google, pause the music," is actually much longer than having to press a button. And as human, if voice was the best way to go for these simple controls, we would already be using them, and we don't. So the longer term trend that we see is that we're not only going to be able to kind of make your life easier in the way you use your earphones, but we're also going to be able to help you control your augmented reality glasses in the simplest and most private way, just by leveraging our controls in your navigation of these glasses or your basic usage of these glasses.
Yeah, those all sound like really, really cool use cases and really useful use cases. I think for most of them, I could probably see myself using like at least several times a week, if not several times a day.
Yeah, another one that's dear to mine, and this one happens very often. I play a lot of video games, as I mentioned, and so when you're playing online and you have your friends with you, your mic is usually open all the time, right? But sometimes you don't want your mic to be open because the dog is barking, or because your partner comes and talks to you asking you what you want to eat for tonight. And the thing is that muting yourself, like while you are in a very clutch moments, is sometimes hard. So having something that allows me to kind of use another type of my body to be able to mute myself is actually something I'm really looking forward to have. This is part of the thing I'm experimenting with right now about technology, just having a simple way to mute myself without having to even think too much about like, what is the key on the keyboard? Oh, I need to bring back the window, the Zoom window, or the Discord to mute myself. Like, these are things that would make my life easier when I'm like gaming. Actually, maybe when I'm on a call, like on a Meet or like Zoom, where again, like, you want to mute your microphone more often than not, so yeah, I think these are other use cases that could make our technology worthwhile for the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see that mute function that you mentioned also being super intuitive.
Yeah.
The next thing I wanted to talk about is, what is the day-to-day like for you as the CEO or executive of a neuroscience, neurotech company? I know you mentioned kind of what the day-to-day was like as you guys were first founding the company, but now that the company is a bit more mature, what are the days like for you?
Now we hired people, so I don't have to do much anymore. Just chill, No, really. So I would talk for the CEO part. I think the CTO might be a bit different. I would say that there is no really such thing as a day-to-day. It's really project-based. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So beginning of the year, we were at CES, right? So we were at the CES. We received an award for the innovation award at CES. We received also an award for accessibility, having a very accessible tech. So these are things where going to CES, going to CES, as is going to be like, for instance, my whole month of December is going to be spending a lot of time trying to understand who are the people we need to talk to, setting up the right demos with the team, working on all the logistics, making sure that, our pitch is ready for what we're going to have to receive these awards, scheduling the meetings, understanding after these meetings over the course of January, how do we follow up with these companies? How do we engage with them? So it's going to be very focused on business development, and that's going to be most of my day. Okay. And during CS, it's going to be 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. meetings. Now, this is, for instance, January. Now we're heading into Q2 right now. Q2 is going to be a crucial moment for us because we're going to be raising funds. So right now, my core focus is that I'm spending a lot of time building all the fundraising documents before starting to reach out to all the investors that we want to talk to and pitching them. So that's going to be my Q2, assuming the fundraising goes well. Q3, I'm going to be back on the product because Q3 is going to be a critical moment for us because that's going to be when we're going to be done with all the electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and it's going to be really about testing that everything works well, starting to engage and build with the community of users that are going to be alpha testing it for us. So collecting kind of the feedback from them, aggregating this into a product roadmap for the next 6 months. So I would say, let's say that on a monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly basis, my tasks are going to be very different from one day to another. There are still some constants along the way. I would say per day, and I'm trying to do a rough average, a rough estimate here. There's a part of my day that I'm going to be just reading news, reading what's happening on the market, because that helps me also think and not just be stuck on Wisear, but also oh, this company just did that. We should think about this. Oh, this company just released that demo. That's awesome. We should get inspiration from them. Oh, that person does that. I should reach out to them and understand what they do and see if there's any way we could collaborate together. So there's a part of my day, maybe 15 minutes to half an hour, that's going to be dedicated to reading news. There's another part of my day that's going to be dedicated to syncing with my team. The bigger the team grows, of course, the more a catch up and one-on-ones you have to have. So I would say maybe per week I must have 5 to 6 hours of internal catch up, maybe more. Yeah, 5 to 6 hours seems to the right number. So maybe there's going to be 1 hour per day that's going to be dedicated of internal catch up. And then that's going to be changing from one day to another. Of course, there's going to be some email answering and so on, but most of it's going to be project based, and it's going to depend on what type of project I'm working on at the moment. And something that I do that's really helping me to understand at one point if I'm spending the right amount of time on the right things is that I do time myself. I use Toggle, which is a tool that freelancers use usually to build their clients. And I time every task I do. So at the end of the day, I know exactly how much time I've spent on everything. And so if, for instance, I realize that I've spent 2 hours and a half answering emails today, and these were not necessarily emails that were super valuable for the project I'm working on right now, I reassess the next day and I make sure that I'm going to be spending really most of my time on the project that's core to me at a given point of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like, depending on what the key project is that quarter or what the key project is that month, that's really what you're focused on as the executive. And that seems like a really smart idea to time yourself and keep checking in and make sure that you're spending your time in the most efficient or in the most effective way. I think you mentioned that you and your co-founder, the company that you were working on, was building basically AI tools for advertising. And so I was wondering, how does your background in product in that space, the AI space, help inform the work you do at Wisear?
So it wasn't building AI tools for advertising. It was leveraging AI for advertising, which was something that wasn't being done back in the days. Predictive machine learning was not really used in advertising. It was mostly a matter of doing nice ads and hoping that people would click on it. So Criteo is very famous for being one of the first company to do what's called performance advertising. So, optimizing towards what's called the click-through rate. So how many people would click on your ads, and having algorithms that are automatically retrained to always show the right ad to the right user so that the user is the most likely to click on that ad. So this is, and then optimizing towards a conversion afterwards. So this is what Criteo was famous for, and what made them the company that they are today, and they used to be. How does that help me? I think there are a couple of things that we got out of it with my co-founder. Number one is working together, which is as stupid as it is, the number one thing that's going to help you have a successful company. If you cannot get along, or if you don't know how to work with your co-founders, which is often the case when you start a company with some friends. You're like, oh, that's gonna be cool. Let's start a company together. And then in the end, like you guys cannot work together. You're very good friends, but you cannot work together. So in our case, like we've been working together on the same project for like close to 2 years at Criteo. That really helped us to kind of know like the balance we need. Like for instance, I like to take like I tend to be afraid of not taking decisions. Like I don't like the moment where you have like three options and you kind of have to think about the three options again and again and again. So I tend to make very quick decisions, which means that I don't mind like being wrong. It's okay for me to change my decision like a week later. My co-founder is a bit on the other side. So basically like he always wants to have the most informed decision. So he's basically going to push so that we're going to dig that option or that option, that option. So in the end, we have a good balance where I'm going to be kind of pushing to make a quick decision, and he's going to be pushing so that we can get more information, or we bring more elements into our reasoning. So we do happen to be in a situation where we take decisions that are not too slow and at the same time that are much more informed than if I was just the only one taking this kind of decision. So these are the kind of things where you learn how to complete each other, you learn how to work to each other. So that's kind of one thing, that the key thing really that I got from Criteo, that we knew how to work together. Now, in terms of like the two other things I would say that helped, like processes. Like as stupid as it is, but like once you start reaching some size of company, like you need some process, you need some HR process, you need some performance review process, you need to be able to kind of give your employees transparency about what the company is doing, how you communicate towards them. So these are things that we learned, even though we're not in agreements with everything, but at least we learned, and we decided to either reproduce or change in our company. We didn't have to rediscover all at once what it meant to manage people and like to structure a company the way we did today. And I would say the number three is the organization of the work. So we do use OKRs at Wisear, which is meaning like objective key results, we actually had our quarterly planification this morning. So every quarter we plan on objectives and some key results tied to these objectives, and we split that by team. And that's really helpful to make sure that everyone's aligned on the roadmap and everyone understands the directions we're going in. Because like if you don't have that, people have less commitment towards their job. If you don't know what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing, then it's very hard to keep like yourself motivated and work all the hours you have to work. It's also helpful because it enables us to kind of look back at what we did the previous quarter, what went well, what did not, and how we learned from this. So these are all the processes, and like both in terms of HR organization, but also about the work of the company that we inherited from Criteo. And I would say the last part, of course, but this one is more on Alan's side, is all the technical expertise. Alan was like leading a team of data scientists over there. So, you know, like he's one of the most brilliant minds that you can find on AI and on Neurotech. So for him, like the real expertise he got from there is like extremely strong and helped him to kind of bring Wisear to the way it is today as quick as we did.
Yeah, it seems like you and your co-founder learned a lot from your experience over there. And that point that you mentioned, when you're looking for a co-founder to find one that really fits well when collaborating with you, that point really resonated with me.
Cool.
So it seems like Wisear is a pretty unique company, but do you view them as having any competitors at this time? And if so, what really differentiates your company from the competitors?
Yeah. If you look at the neurotech landscape, it's interesting because like everyone's competitor, but everyone's also good friends. So you know, you have companies like I do, like Neurable, like Nexsense or Muse even. And so what's happening is that today the neurotech industry is so small that everyone that manages to get a breakthrough is helping the other. If you were to take another example, like, you know, everyone has been making fun of Meta for launching the Quest and like renaming themselves Meta and like basically like kind of creating all the momentum around spatial computing and augmented reality. And now that Apple has launched it, everyone's like, oh, this is like amazing, spatial computing is great. But also the fact that Apple has launched the Vision Pro definitely helps Meta, because Meta has been in the field for so long that now everyone's like, oh, I cannot buy the Vision Pro. What else can I buy? Oh, I can buy the Quest 3. So every breakthrough that is made by either of these companies is helping the other one at this moment until the market gets saturated. And at that point, you fall back to like, okay, strong competition. I would say that for the neurotech industry, it's at a maybe smaller level, even like it's the same story. So you have everyone's trying to understand what's the best way to crack that market. How do we make neurotech part of everyone's life? We have our own approach. We think it's earphones/glasses and control. Neurable is going in the field of like focus. iDune, for instance, they go with like sleep and hearing health. So these are companies that are taking different angle. Yet, if any of us manages to be like, oh, hey, there is this neural interface headphones that come out, then basically it helps the other ones, because people are going like, neural interface headphones, what is it? And so they're going to be looking at, oh, Wisear is neural interface headphones. What do? They do this and this and that. iDune is doing this and this and that. So depending on your use case, you're going to be like looking and buying the iDune or the Wisear or the Neurable. And so really that's kind of how I see it today. So to answer your question, yes, we have competitors. I can name companies like Nexense, iDune, Neurable, but at the same time, these companies are like also friends, and actually we know each other very well. I text Frances on a daily basis, like maybe not daily, like monthly basis. Same with like Simon from iDune, and so we do help each other when we can. So that's an interesting place to be in, because again, you're not. Everyone's trying to understand how to make that market a reality, and so if one of us succeeds, if anything, is going to help the other ones.
I've noticed a similar trend that the neurotech field does seem to be really collaborative, and maybe that is tied to what you said, how it's kind of a cutting edge field. It's kind of a relatively new field now, and fields that are in that stage tend to be really, really collaborative, and that's kind of awesome that all the companies are able to kind of keep in touch with each other and work together, and any press for one company in neurotech is probably good for the other companies in neurotech.
Yeah, totally.
And so we discussed a little bit about the next product release, or the product release for Wisear coming up in a couple months. I believe you mentioned like Q3 or Q4. And so
Q4, yeah.
Q4, cool. After that product release, what do you envision as kind of the next few steps for the company after that?
Yeah, great questions. So I would say there are two things. The roadmap for us is very simple. So first we release the product, then we license the technology. So the goal of this product is really to be a flagship product. Hey guys, this is what can be done with neural interface. And this can fit into a product that's really cool, that's really nice, that's already solving quite a few use cases. And then you go and you talk to Bose, to Samsung, to Sony, and you're like, see, we told you. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, you can integrate our technology and you can integrate that into your future earphones, and that's going to be helping your end users. And so I think one track of what we're going to be doing once that product is out there is expand our business through licensing to make sure that it's not just the Wisear user that can benefit the Wisear technology, but really any user out there. That's going to be for the business side of us. For the product side of us, I would say that we're going to keep adding more and more features on that first earphones that people are going to be buying. So whoever buys our device tomorrow is going to get, of course, our controls at first, but we are working, the whole idea is to make this device a platform on which we're going to be keep adding more and more things. So I was talking about a bit of our research earlier. We are working a lot on like hearing health, like hearing thresholds and so on. So these are things that we could help with. We are also working more and more on like relaxation, stress. So these are patterns that we're looking into. The reason why we don't push that when the product gets released is that we have kind of a no bullshit policy internally. So we don't want to be that one company that says, yeah, wear our device for like, 3 hours a day and you will have no cancer and you will be able to read people's mind. And like, so we really want to, when we release something, we want to make sure that scientifically it's valid. And that's been part of our DNA from the beginning. A lot of our advisors are like part of like our researchers. So we want to make sure that everything we do, we run by them to make sure that we don't come up with false conclusions or false promises to the end user. So licensing one thing to expand the number of people that can access the technology, adding more features onto the device for those who have our device over the next few years. And number three, focusing on the next generation. And this part, I won't disclose too much as well at the moment. This is going to be a 2025 communication, I would say.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like there's really exciting times ahead in all three of those domains. As we head towards the conclusion of the podcast, I I wanted to pivot and talk a little bit about maybe the neurotechnology industry at a macro level, as well as some advice for people looking to get involved with the field. But before pivoting to that, is there anything you'd like to mention to kind of conclude our discussion about Wisear?
Honestly, I think we talked about a lot of things. I would just say that maybe I don't know if we're going to close the podcast on this, but like we're going to be we're currently just created a first community on Discord, and we really want to be in touch with as many people as possible about this, because we're not going to be able to build a great product if we stay on our little like lab. So if this is something that you're interested in participating, please join our Discord community. Please come and chat with us. Please tell us what your problems are with your current earphones and how we can solve them, or any other things you have in mind. Really, like that's going to truly help us, and we'll make sure that we listen to you to the best we can. Yeah?
Absolutely. Well, I think I would definitely be interested in participating in this community, and I think that the listeners of this podcast are definitely a good group for a community like that, because they're very interested in this space that that Wisear is working in.
Cool.
What advice would you give to either students or young professionals aiming to break into the field of neurotech or aiming to work in the field of neurotech? And I think, you know, you would be a really awesome person to be able to give this advice, because you kind of started your career in a little bit different of a field and kind of pivoted over to neurotech a few years in.
Yeah, I guess I was lucky to meet my co-founder as well. Like I would have not been able to do it without him. I think it's okay. I would assume, if I were to make a comparison, I would say that neurotech today might be like generative AI 3 years ago. The timeline may not be right, but say there is going to be a neurotech moment. So that's one thing for sure. There's going to be a neurotech moment. We see it like every single company out there, like Apple, Meta, Google, Sony, like they all have departments working on like neural interfaces, non-invasive neural interfaces. They're all looking for the right use case, the right form factor. They have patents that are being published every year. So there is something that's boiling right here. So if I were back to my student life, I think I would try to explore as many, I would say, devices or use cases, or spend time to research, really, because like research is time we don't really have once we start our day, our professional life. So this is a field that is not solved. Everything has to be done yet. Like we have an approach, but maybe it's not the right one. Maybe like someone else will come up with something else. So I would spend some time to really explore, understand where the research is at right now, and explore both the use cases that you want to tackle, but also how you make these use cases a reality with devices people can actually wear, not just like some prototype in the lab. Really, like, can I make this fit into these glasses? You know, oh, I don't know, I'm wearing like this wristband every day. Can I make anything fit in that wristband? Would that work? So I would spend some time really just digging the hardware, digging the form factor, and like trying to get something that really works outside of the lab. And then if you get that and you find a cool use case that it's solving, I think you've already made much more than most of the companies out there. So I would say explore more than anything else, be in an exploration phase. It's not the problem that's solved yet. So you need to really be exploring and like be creative in the way you tackle things.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I totally agree with you especially in terms of the exploring the field as a student before you jump into it, and really kind of figuring out, you know, not only where do you fit in well, but since this field is unsolved, like maybe you'll make a discovery that really
exactly
fits in well with something you might want to build.
And it's something that is often overlooked. It's not just a deep tech, hard tech problem. It's not just about digging the new material for the electrodes or digging a novel and analog front end. There's really a question of how do you package that into a product? Like, it's not just a tech problem, it's also a product problem. And I think that's something that's often overlooked. People are like, oh yeah, we made that great demonstration in the lab of something that was never done before. Great. How do we move from that to a product that everyone can use? And so I think this is that bit that needs to be cracked today. The technology or the components already exist. Like, how do you make the product a reality, and that make sure that people see value in it.
Yeah, sometimes one of the hardest steps is really taking these amazing discoveries and transferring them into the real world. I know you mentioned with your own product, one of the key things that you saw differently from the lab versus the real world is that there's a lot of extra like noise and interference, and I think a lot of other products in the space may have similar things that they need to accomplish or overcome in order to really translate into the real world.
Totally.
And so to zone in a little bit more specifically on potential founders, since we were more so talking about students before, do you have any advice for potential founders that are maybe looking to start a business in the neurotech space?
Yeah, I would say like my first advice is more on the potential founder part. People keep telling me that, and I think like I should have listened to it more at the beginning, but it's very, very, very energy consuming. So make sure that first you care enough about yourself that you don't burn everything too quickly. And also remember it's a marathon, like as in like we've been in it for 5 years now. So the energy that you're going to be putting at the beginning, if you put too much, you won't have enough to finish the marathon somehow. So I would say really care about yourself and like try to set boundaries as early as possible. Even if it's like the hardest thing to do, because when you start a company, you don't want to set boundaries, you want to give it your best and so on. I would say like try to set boundaries, try to care about yourself as early as possible. So that would be my general advice. In the neurotech field, I would say my learning over the years that unfortunately this is not something that you can bootstrap. You need money, you need investors. So I would try to focus on doing the best you can in like maybe 6 months, a year with like very limited funding, and try to use that to raise a big round. Why a big round? Because you don't necessarily need all of it, but you will make mistakes. You will learn from your mistakes. You will iterate. You will have to kind of it's not like the roadmap is not fully straightforward in this kind of companies. So you need to have enough buffer to kind of iterate enough time until you crack it, And so I think that this is something I would have liked to understand earlier on, so that I could have been able to kind of, instead of doing several rounds of funding, just like get one bigger round and focus on that, and then like be focused on the product.
Yeah, I've heard that funding could be really time intensive, and so I guess I never thought of that aspect. Instead of doing these iterative rounds, maybe it's more efficient, as you mentioned, to just raise like a big chunk at the same time, and that way you can really stay more focused on building and product and these sorts of things. And then also that point you made about self-care really resonates with me, because although a startup may seem or feel like a sprint, a lot of times it does turn into a marathon, and you don't want to be sprinting too fast at the beginning of the marathon.
Exactly.
And get tired out.
Exactly. And yeah, I've been talking to so many founders, and like, yes, too often we are in very, very tired states, which is detrimental for everything, for you, for your partner, your and your company even. So like I think it's important to try to acknowledge that at first, and set the right boundaries.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And so do you have any predictions for the field of neurotechnology over the next 20 years or so, over the long term?
I guess, I mean, everything is like, my predictions are what we're doing at Wisear, right? I do believe neurotech will be parts. I do believe that 5 years down the road, the latest, every device you have on you, your glasses, earphones, like smartwatches already have electrodes, will be equipped with electrodes or some kind of brain sensing technology. So I'm pretty convinced about this. I do believe also that these sensors will be used both for control, but also for some kind of wellness, whether it is stress, relaxation, or like, other type of monitoring for the brain. So I do believe these are things that are going to happen in the next 5 years, and then it's going to become mainstream. For the next 20 years now, I would tend to believe that invasive will become also much more common across people with disabilities. And I'm talking about like why, because like big companies like Neuralink, Synchron, and so on will kind of solve the problem of like having implants that are not too bulky and that don't require having like a whole server behind you to run. And I do think that's also going to be kind of a bridging the gap of neurotech from the other side. So you're going to have a push for on the non-invasive side. It's going to become mainstream, and you're going to have a push from the invasive side that's going to be more widespread across people with disabilities. And as this goes on, they're going to be able to provide them with more and more capabilities, not just moving a mouse, but maybe reading like or like creating complex commands directly from their brain, and not just like a simple point and click system. So yeah, these would be my predictions. But again, if I knew what the future would be about, I would be extremely rich right now.
Yeah, these things are super hard to predict, but I think that what you said right there has a lot of logic behind it, and I think it'll be an exciting time ahead to see if that's what happens. I think that you and your company have really positioned yourself in a good spot to be able to interface well with the future in a variety of different directions.
Thank you, Robert.
Absolutely. And so, before we get ready to sign off, I was wondering, is there anything else that we haven't discussed yet that you'd like to mention? Or I know you mentioned earlier you might want to do some sort of demo near the end. This might be a good time for that.
I may do that actually. Give me one quick second. I'm gonna switch and put my earphones on.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So the very simple. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna change. Yeah, I'm gonna give you a regular demo on how we can control a media on a any device really, but like right now it's gonna be on my laptop.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna be sharing my screen in a sec so you can see
Sounds good.
Spotify, and then I'm gonna show you how I can control my Spotify. Okay, just using. Okay, cool. Can you share? You can see my screen, correct?
Yes, I can see it now.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna be increasing the volume a little bit. Okay, so you should see that I'm not using my hands right now. Sorry, I can see. Well, I cannot see myself, so I will. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not using my hands right now. I'm gonna be playing the music just by doing a simple facial control. Oh, sorry, I know why. Quick second, and now it should work. Yeah, all right. So I can play the music, as you can see. If I glance to the right, I can change the song. If I glance to the left, I can come back. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, really. I can pause again. So these are like just the basic controls we've been building. This is just showing you how simple it is to use, how invisible it is as well. If you look at me, you don't really perceive them. Like we have plenty of applications. Like really, I was playing Temple Run earlier. But really, the idea is to give you the opportunity once you have our product to customize this to whatever your needs are. Media being the first use case, but really, if you want to use it to open ChatGPT with a glance, that's also something we're going to be able to provide you with. So yeah, that's just a very simple demonstration of how our technology works, how simple it is to use, how quickly you can learn the gestures as well. And then maybe to final word, as I said, like we're going to be launching our product in Q4. So if there's something that's of interest to you, just go to our website, leave us your email address, we'll get back to you. Or you can simply join our Discord community. We're going to have like more day-to-day exclusive updates, I would say. And very happy if you're interested in like joining our alpha program or beta program, we will need this type of feedback anyway. So please join us and please tell us that you're interested.
Awesome. Yeah. First off, thank you for the demonstration. And I'll be sure to link some of these resources that you mentioned in the show notes once this episode gets published, so it's easy for people to find them. And yeah, maybe I could talk to you offline. I might be interested in kind of joining one of these alphas or betas.
Absolutely. That'd be a pleasure to have you, Robert.
Absolutely. And I know we went a little over on time, so I don't want to keep you any longer, but I just want to say thanks again for meeting with me today. This conversation was super interesting. I feel like I learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about your company, and I'm definitely excited about Wisear, and going to be keeping an eye on you guys and rooting for you.
Awesome. Well, Robert, thank you so much. That was a pleasure talking to you. And indeed, I'm going to have to drop. But yeah, I was very happy to talk a bit more about us. And like, if anyone has any question and want to reach out to us, again, either go to the website or you can just directly add me on LinkedIn. This is where I'm the most responsive, I would say. So please do so. And otherwise, have a great day, I guess.
Yeah, sounds great. Hope you have a great rest of your day as well.
Bye-bye, Robert.
Bye.